welcome to Personal Pathways. Tonight my guest is Cerridwen Fallingstar. She is the author of The Heart of the Fire, which is about witchcraft in the 16th century Scotland. She is also a priestess of 17 years. She is a witch, a shamanic witch. She does tarot, hypnotherapy, and palmistry as well. And it is a pleasure to have her on the show tonight. It's going to be an incredible show. We will be opening up the phone lines in about 10 minutes. And Cerridwen,
Great.
this is great. We finally got it together.
Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. I'm enjoying all the people who work here
You've
very
had an
much.
incredible year and a half, too, with this book, The Heart
Yeah,
of
there's
the
been a
Fire.
lot happening. The book came out about a year and a half ago,
Right.
and I just signed a contract with a very big New York agent who's going to try and get it out there a little further into the public eye. It's a
Right.
historical novel about witchcraft in 16th century Scotland, so it's sort of like the Myths of Avalon. It shows, who the witches really were, what they were really doing, what happened when the Inquisition
Right.
started to take over the lives of the common people. Witchcraft, contrary to what many people still believe, is what remains of the very old pagan shamanic traditions of the Celtic and European peoples. These people, like the Native American people and like the African and Asian peoples, believed that all life was connected.
Right.
They believed that God was both immanent as well as transcendent. That means in the world as well as beyond the world.
Right.
They believed that sexuality was sacred, that that was the essence of creation because it created life. They saw God as both goddess and God, male and female, seeing them as the divine parents. And that was, what all people all over the world believed for thousands and thousands of years, from the dawn of history up until really quite recently, when people started turning away from the earth and started seeing things as either or. Well, if it's spirit, then it can't be physical.
Right.
If it's male, it can't be female. We started dividing things up and having dichotomy. And this has created a lot of problem, and you can see that, for instance, in our environmental crisis today. This has been brought about by people not seeing God in nature, not seeing God in the universe.
Well, isn't witchcraft earth religion, earth magic?
It's an earth-based religion. It's very similar, as I said, to the Native American traditions, which are probably what most people would be more familiar with as an earth-based tradition.
Right.
But this was the Caucasian people's earth-based tradition. We had a very similar way of looking at things up until, as I said, about 5,000 years ago in the Middle East, things started to change.
Right.
And much more recently, within just the last couple hundred years, in Europe, the witch burnings came through and destroyed millions of people were killed, and the old traditions were mostly lost.
What provoked the witch burnings back then? Because it went on for a long time.
Yeah, it was about a good 300-400 year period where it was very intense. And it actually went on throughout the Renaissance, was when the witch burnings were the most intense. People think of it as being like the Dark Ages, but it really wasn't. It started kind of at the end of the 1200s and went right into the 1700s.
So why were so many people burned? There was a lot of innocent people burned too, and
course,
accusations.
right.
Accusations.
Well, of course, you have to realize that once things got started, they would take someone and torture her until she named other names. Then they would take those people and torture them until they named names, and you can imagine how things just got totally out of hand. And you didn't have to be a witch or be doing anything at all to be named. You just had to be someone who was unlucky when someone else named you in the torturing room, or you had to be a pretty girl who some boy had an infatuation and confessed to the priest, and the priest said, "Oh, you bewitched him." Or
but were the Christians behind this?
many things. Yes. It was.
It started with the
it was.
Christians.
Oh yeah. It was totally instigated by the Catholic Church at the time. Then the Protestants also carried it on later. Now it's important to realize that not all Christians, are against witchcraft. The Catholic Church at the time had already destroyed most of who it called the heretics, who were the Christians who really understood the teachings of Christ, who really thought that Christ was about unconditional love. The church that got into control was a church of control, of power over, of manipulation. It was very much into money, control, power. They supported the right of kings. It was very hierarchical. And they were totally out of touch with the real essence of the teachings of Jesus.
Right.
I don't have any quarrel with the real essence of the teachings of Jesus, which I think is unconditional love. But that was not what was dominating in the churches at that time. What was dominating was very anti-female, anti-earth, anti-life. and very pro-death. And that, unfortunately, there's still a lot of that in some of the fundamentalist and other Christian traditions today. There are, however, many Christians who are much more understanding. For instance, Matthew Fox,
Right.
You know, the Unitarians. You know, there's just many Christian people and traditions who I think understand and really feel the essence of God much more in their teachings.
Well, what promoted you to write The Heart of the Fire? Because it's an intense book. It's got a lot of
Thank you. Yes.
incredible information in it.
It is a past life novel. It was something that I remembered from the time. I remembered pieces of it from the time I was a very young child. I had strong past life memories from the time I was very, very young. So this started just, you know, being something I needed to tell. It was a story I needed to tell.
It's a personal story, isn't it?
And so basically I had to do it. Also, my coven at the time really pushed me into making it public. I kept saying, this is personal. This is a personal project. And I said, no, this isn't personal. You know, as one of my sisters said, she said, you know, not too many people have a window into history the way you do. You remember things. Most people don't remember.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility. And I was a professional writer before I started the book, so I
helps.
had the writing skills to do it. You know,
Right.
it's really the only decent past life novel I think that exists. Because I've read some of the other ones and they're just terrible.
Yeah.
You know, people have the memories, but they don't have the writing skill to make a time period come alive. And
Well,
to
you
make
came
the
in with the
characters.
writing skill and
I came in with the skill to
witchcraft. Speaking of which, how
tell
would you
it.
explain
Yeah.
witchcraft to someone who didn't know what a witch or witchcraft is?
Right. Well, first I would just say, no, it's not about Satanism. That was something that was said about witches during the burning times, which is still said about us. Because if you want to destroy a bunch of people, you don't go around and say, well, they're a really nice bunch of people, but we want to wipe them out anyway.
Right.
If you want to destroy a bunch of people, you have to first make them demonic. You have to make them non-human. You have to erase their humanity. This is what Hitler did with the Jews. I often say, imagine if Hitler had won the war. 500 years later, what do you think people say about the Jews? And that's what has been said about the witches. The people who fought the witches won the war. They destroyed most of the traditions that had existed. They destroyed most of the people who had practiced those traditions and discouraged others from being, you know, to the point where they, you know, you have to realize this went on 300-400 years of
I was
a
amazed
solid
when I
reign
realized
of terror.
that for that long of
Yeah.
time. I had no idea it
that's
went on that long.
generation after generation after generation. After a while, it's like, are you going to teach your children this, knowing that it may kill them?
Right.
You know, a lot of people will say, no, it's not worth it. Let's survive and just forget the old ways.
Well, you know, a lot of people who don't understand what witchcraft is, or even being a witch, have a problem with it.
Right,
Because they're ignorant to it.
You know, the word is a big trigger. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
oh no. Like these people, I'm going to perform a wedding for some friends, and they made the mistake of using what I call the W word, right off the bat with their parents. And their parents were like, oh my God, a witch is going to officiate at your wedding.
Right.
They were upset.
There's a charge.
And so people sometimes say, well, why don't you just use another word? And I say, well, for the same reason that black people don't want to call themselves white.
Right.
And the same reason that Jews don't use a less controversial word. And the same reason that I, as a woman, don't try and pass for a man.
Right. That's
The
who you are.
fact that these groups have been discriminated against is no reason for us to change our name or try and hide behind a new label.
Right.
And there are certainly a lot of people in the New Age who say that what they're doing is New Age, and all the techniques that they're using are old shamanic magical techniques.
Right.
They just think that New Age sounds nicer, you know, sounds less threatening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you've got a great article in Common Ground,
thank you.
the summer issue. Cerridwen has an article on why enlightenment needs endarkenment. And I read that article, and it was really right on. Everything you said about the light and the dark and the balance between male and female and the God-Goddess movement and everything. It was really, you really put an incredible message in the, you know, Common Ground
Thank you.
issue.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
See, I think part of what needs to happen is for people to bring the old separated halves back together. That male and female are not opposites. We're a reproductive whole. You know, we're put here to make union and creation. Dark and light are not opposites. You've got, you know, the day and the night moving together. The plant has to reach its roots into the earth, and then it can stretch its leaves into the sun. That these things all move together, and that in the old ways you sought for the balance. You know, we looked for the balance, and I think it's time for us again to search for the balance. So witch, you're asking about the definition, it comes from the word, same root word as willow. So it means to bend, like a willow, to bend and flow with the wind. A witch is someone who flows with the energy of the cosmos, the Tao, flowing with the Tao, flowing with the energy of what is. It's learning how to align yourself with God, Goddess, all that is, and to channel, therefore, forces and energies bigger than yourself for a bigger goal. So it's an old, as I said, a shamanic tradition that is very adaptable to new times, and it focuses on being in harmony with the forces of nature.
Yes, what a lovely way to put it. And on that note, if you would like to call in and speak with Cerridwen this evening, the number is 521-4844. We will not be doing live phone readings, but if you want to talk about witchcraft or what is a witch or anything we're going to talk about tonight, give us a call. Let's talk about, and you brought it up, the difference between a witch and a Satanist and a ritualist, because there are three big differences. How would you explain that to someone who wasn't quite sure? Because there's,
as I said, a witch is someone who does have the consciousness that they want to align themselves with that higher power and with the powers of nature. They see themselves as being all part of the web of creation. You know, we see ourselves as working to create for the good of all, for the benefit of all. Satanists, from what I understand, see themselves much more separate from other beings and from the universe. They tend to see things in what I see as a limited, egoic kind of a way. Well, I'm just going to do this without thinking about how the consequences are going to affect others.
Right.
They also worship Satan, who is a Christian god. You know, the Christian devil that's just not a god that we have anything to do with in our tradition. We don't have a god of evil. Real witches do not have a god that is a god of evil.
Well,
so
you know what, real quick, let's take this call, see what they have to ask. Hello?
Hello?
You're live on the air?
Yes. I'd like to know if people that join this group have a special way of thinking. Is there some gift that, or they special in some way? I mean, or anyone just can join in?
Yeah, she's asking if you have to have special gifts to become a witch, or if anyone can do it. If the path calls to you and your heart responds to it, then you can be a witch. Not all witches are psychically gifted. I work as a professional psychic, but many witches don't have particular psychic gifts. A lot of witches choose to develop them because it's something that is very open in our tradition. But you don't have to. It's not like you're born a witch or you have to be from a witch family or anything like that. It's a spiritual path like any other. And if it feels good to you, then you can do it.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Thanks for calling. They also, the pentacle. There's so many misconceptions of a pentacle, and that's the star.
Yeah, it's a five-pointed star.
It's a five-pointed star. Now, if it's pointing one way, it means...
If the central point is pointing up, then that's a sign of witchcraft. It's a sign of the earth. It's what you see if you cut an apple in half. You see the little pentacle. If you look at a starfish, it's or a sand dollar. It's one of nature's natural symbols, and it symbolizes the earth. Satanists sometimes wear that reverse so that the point hangs downward. That's how you can tell, which way somebody is with that.
Don't understand that.
Right, but you have to realize that, Satanists also hang crucifixes upside down. I mean, they do a lot of reversal kinds of things. It's a very rebellious kind of a spiritual trip. It feels very adolescent to me. It's often like, so, Mom and Dad, check this out.
Though we're not knocking the Satanists, to each his own,
Well, it depends, I think there are satanic groups that are involved with ritual abuse of children and mutilation, and that is totally unacceptable. No witch ever, anyone says they're involved in witchcraft and they're into any kind of ritual abuse of people or animals, that's not witchcraft. Now, I understand that not all Satanists do that either. I mean, that's what I've heard from people who say that they're Satanists. So I don't know, because I really don't know enough about it to know for sure. I have heard from them that they don't all do that.
Right, and I've heard the same thing. So,
but definitely you don't want to be involved with anybody who does anything like that at all.
Well, you've brought in so many little things here to look at, like this. What do you call it?
It's a conch shell.
And what would you use that for?
This is a calling conch. It's it's open at this end, so you could use it to make a deep sound to invoke the directions. It also symbolizes the west, the waters. Like the Native Americans, we talk about the 4 directions, the east, the south, the west, and the north, which correspond to spirit, will, heart, and body, air, fire, water, earth.
Right.
They have a series of correspondences. So this would be symbolic of the west. You might put it on a western altar, or on your altar to symbolize that.
And we have here the crystal ball.
That's used for scrying, which is a type of psychic exploration where you gaze into a surface like that. It could be anything. It can be a dark bowl of water, anything that reflects. And you start seeing pictures in the crystal, and then you can interpret the pictures and talk to someone, give someone a psychic reading.
That's an incredible crystal ball. It's just beautiful. It's one of the nicest ones I've seen in a long time. We've got another call.
Okay.
Hi, you're live on the air.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. I would be interested in knowing how to create a loving relationship with someone that you're with at the moment. Maybe working with crystals or candles.
So this is someone you're in relationship with?
Yes.
That you want
just starting.
You want to deepen your love together? I would suggest tantra. I would suggest sex magic. I would suggest, if you're talking about a sexual relationship, I would suggest learning something about how to move the sexual energy and use your sexual energy to create more love. Make that as your intention. When you make love, say, let's use this to create more openness, more intimacy, more connection, to break down any barriers. Use your sexual energy. Sex magic is probably one of the most potent kinds of magic you can do, because every sexual act has the power to create a child. That's a tremendous amount of power. So make use of it. If you're not creating a child, create something that you want. Create your relationship to be deeper. Create, that you're going to generate more income. Focus your intention and use your sexual energy is one really great thing to do. Also things like looking into each other's eyes, just meditating and looking into each other's eyes. Put your third eyes together and just close your eyes and feel yourself blend with between your third eyes. And always tell the truth. That's the main thing. If you want intimacy, always tell the truth. That's magic.
Right.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You do work with traditional shamanic healing, and you use methods bringing in inner dynamics for self-transformation in all of your work, I would think. And that's with the tarot, the palmistry, and the hypnotherapy. And you do also shamanic healing as well.
I do Reiki, which is a kind of hands-on healing that's very powerful. I like to combine it with hypnosis work, because when you have a physical illness, it's always connected to your psyche, and if you just take away someone's physical symptoms, something else is going to come up later, because that's they're unconsciously creating those symptoms to communicate. Some part of you is trying to communicate with another part. So I usually try and work with the person to get them more conscious, more aware, and more responsible for, okay, what's happening? How are you unconsciously creating this? What's this really about? And the hypnosis is a real direct access for people who are ready to go into that level of power. It's very, very helpful. The tarot and the palmistry is more of an overview, where people who feel like they're not quite ready to do that deeper level, or who just want to kind of get a big picture, I can tell them, through using those techniques.
Now with tarot, it's different than how you use palmistry. You explained to me palmistry is past to present.
Palmistry doesn't usually have a whole lot of future in it, because your palms change as you change. Everything can change in your palms except your fingerprints. Even the general shape of your hand can change if you yourself are making inner transformation. So you may see things. You can look at the lifeline, for instance, say, I see some health problems coming up if you don't change X. Or you can look at the career line, and sometimes you'll see something, you'll say, oh, it looks like a new career is going to be coming in at about age 45. Sometimes you see things, but you have to realize that the future, we're creating it all the time. And I can see something, for instance, say, if you make some changes, this could be different, but if you keep going on this path, this is what you can expect.
And that's with the tarot.
And that's, the tarot or the palmistry, or, whatever method I'm using to get that information.
What about future readings?
That's
someone comes to you with the tarot and...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can get future trends. I can say, well, this is a probable outcome. This looks like what's coming in. This is going to happen. But then the main thing is it's not that you're predestined and you go to a reader to find out what your destiny is. You go to a reader to find out what are the influences coming in and how can I best use them? Again, how can I best flow with the Tao of the moment, with the movement of the moment? How can I use this to my best advantage? It's kind of like asking, hey, what way is the wind blowing?
Right.
So you can put your sail up to catch it.
Right.
So it's very participatory, and you shouldn't ever go to any reader who doesn't make you feel empowered afterwards.
Oh,
If you
totally.
don't feel more powerful and like you have more information, they have not given you a good reading. If you leave feeling depressed or like you need to come back so that they can take a spell off you or something, run the other direction. A reading should make you feel more powerful.
Got another call?
Okay, let's go.
Hi there, you're live on the air.
Yes. I would like to ask for some insight. I keep attracting situations, especially with women, where it brings my anger up, and I feel that this might be unresolved anger with my mother who has passed, and I'm not sure if this is correct, but I would like some insight on what maybe I could do to resolve this.
I think you're probably right that it has to do with your mother, and it may also have to do with those women mirroring denied aspects of yourself. Because we tend to get triggered by parts of ourself that we have pushed away and that we don't want to own or acknowledge. For instance, someone who, the hippie gets really triggered by people who are materialistic because he's pushed away all his materialism and he doesn't buy that. So kind of look at what triggers you and say, what part of me do I not want to deal with here? Or ask yourself, how does this remind me of my mother? Does it in any way? What's really going on? And just be aware. I think you're aware that what's coming up isn't stuff that's really current. We do tend to attract situations energetically. It's like you have a certain kind of Velcro. Like you have Velcro saying, maybe women betray me and I can't trust them and I have problems with them. As long as you've got that Velcro happening, you'll keep attracting women
I want to
who will fulfill that. Oh, I understand you want to stop it. So you're right, the way to look is to really pursue the roots of it. And you can do that with a counselor, who's just a straightforward therapist or a shamanic counselor, a hypnotherapist. Feel what's right for you and get at those roots, dig it up, and change your agreements. I support you in that.
Right,
completely.
thank you very much.
Thanks for calling. You also do private work as well. You do private counseling work.
Yeah, the private counseling work is what we were just talking about, the hypnotherapy and
then you use all those
the
tools.
counseling. So I use all those tools when I do private sessions, depending on what the person needs the most. Yeah.
Well, you've got some more things I want to share with everybody before we leave, because we only have a few more minutes.
Okay.
You have the goddess over here, and what would you use her for in ceremony?
She'd just be a goddess figure, it's a little African fertility goddess. And
so would you use that for someone who's, wanting to have children in a certain
possibly,
ceremony?
or just to have her on the altar to symbolize the goddess energy. The horns, the antlers symbolize the god energy. So it's from a male animal. That again, the Christians said that the devil had horns and all this kind of thing. Well, it was because one of the aspects of the god had horns because he was the god of the animals. He was the god of the beasts. Again, we didn't used to see God in animals or God in plants, God in nature as being separate. We saw them intertwined.
Right. Those are beautiful antlers, by the way, as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
I want to touch on quickly, too, more of this article. You brought up some really incredible points on the New Age and people staying in the light, but really not looking at their shadow.
Right, yeah.
And if you want to talk a couple of minutes on that.
Okay, yeah,
it was very enlightening.
Well, one of the points that I made in that article, which you can get if you have a copy of Common Ground, you can also find my phone number and stuff in there if you want to contact me further, was just that the New Age has tended to be very unbalanced in the same way that some of the old Christian tradition was very unbalanced, where it's all, let's just have light and transcendence and get out of our feelings and get out of our bodies. And there's a lot of denial then, that it really just becomes the new denial.
Yeah, the new denial.
It's the same old stuff kind of refiltered, where people say, I just feel loving all the time. And it's a lie.
Well, there's a lot of it out there in the New Age.
There's a lot of pretend. It's like, let's just pretend. And visualization isn't exactly the same as let's pretend.
Right.
To have a good visualization, you have to be free of denial. You have to be really seeing what is and then deciding to change what is into what you want. Right. That's the real difference from pretending something isn't there, like, there's no child abuse happening in our family. Everything's fine. We all love each other so much. Daddy doesn't drink.
Right.
It's that same old stuff, and it's all these people raised in those kind of denial families perpetuating their denial instead of looking and seeing, whoa, what's really happening and how do I really feel about it? When people get into a should about, you shouldn't feel angry, you shouldn't feel fearful. You shouldn't feel sad. You should just feel happy and loving all the time. Then they've set themselves up to not have authentic feelings. And once you are out of your center and not feeling your authentic feelings, you don't have your strength. You don't have your power. And you're not going to be able to change things. So that's why these visualizations don't usually work.
Right. Well, again, I support this article. And if you happen to see a common ground and you would like to pick one up and read it, I encourage you to do so.
I just also want to mention that I do teach classes. I teach an apprenticeship program and I teach other classes so that people who want to learn more about these ways of being on the earth, I'm real happy to help.
And you may be next year going on a journey to Scotland.
That's right. I've had a travel agent ask me to lead a metaphysical tour to Scotland next year.
And that'll be
so
an
if you want more
incredible
information
thing.
about, we're going to go to the most intense sacred sites and not do a whole lot of traveling around from place to place, but just focus and really do intense shamanic work at each site.
Cerridwen, thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
It's been a nice show, and I'd like to have you on again sometime soon.
Great.
I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I'm Sherry from the Moon and Star in Oakland, and I look forward to being with you again next month. Be well, be happy, but above all, be who you really are. Good night.